Nope, did I send that? Nope, I didn't send it yet. Let's send it. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Did it go? Looks like it went. Okay, I guess we're live. All right. Excellent. Camera two. We're going this way. Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info, doing things a little differently with the weekend being what it was. Brandon Jones, unofficially your winner of today's this afternoon's race, the Xfinity Series, and Stephen Light, unofficially, once again, your last place finisher pending the results of inspection. Doing things a little bit different this weekend. What's really challenging is this is my long week at work. I got one more shift tonight, so the articles for both today's Truck Series race and the Xfinity race probably won't be posted until either late tonight or first part of tomorrow. But we'll do the live stream here today. I think it'll be better to do this in the moment than push this tomorrow like I'd originally planned. So we'll do this for a little bit and talk a bit about, we got quite a bit to cover here. First and foremost, before we get any further into this, certainly my condolences to the family, the Petty family particularly, as the chief himself, Maurice Petty, passed away earlier today. It seems like, unfortunately, this has been a bit of a sad day to say the least here. Not just with what happened with him, but also what we had Regis Philbin and goodness, what was the other one from the Pinty Series driver as well? I didn't see him compete there, but yeah, Brandon White in the Pinty Series was the other competitor we had today. I guess these things happen in threes or something like that, but certainly condolences to the family and friends and fans of all three of them in particular on this. Sometimes these things come together as they are. But definitely a kind of day in terms of the kinds of weekend in racing, really, that I think certainly people like Brandon White and Maurice Petty would be very proud of. Very competitive racing through all top of the three series divisions this weekend. Plenty to talk about on both ends of the field, in particular. So I guess we'll talk about that here, kind of a little bit of a scattershot kind of show here today. But again, yeah, great job by Brandon Jones there at the end of the Xfinity race. It looked like Austin Cindric was going to be practically unstoppable with his streak that's been going on there. And then what on earth does Ryan Sieg need to do to win a race? I know he was on a different strategy to get up there at the end, but it seemed like that last restart he had a great start, but just no momentum on the inside line. If you had to run the middle to high groove, it seemed like that was the place to be. Xfinity Series, though, again, proving to have some of the best racing that we've seen in all the series this year. I think even competing with the Truck Series, it still boggles the mind how many great small team storylines we have in here and these newcomers coming up there. I know a lot of people were concerned about the prospect of losing Tyler Reddick and Christopher Bell and not Chase Briscoe, but Cole Custer into the Cup Series at the same time. But there's definitely, the future is looking very bright with a lot of the competitors in there. And not all of them drive Fords. So there's some of the other, GR Motorsports group is very strong as well and seem to be just on the cusp of making something happen. Whoop, I just see out of the corner of my eye. Thank you again for the super chat piece of metal. Ross Chastain got screwed because NASCAR is too stupid to realize that it's going to force extra distance on races. It should use video instead of scoring loops for restart order. And also, okay, I assume this will be a second part of that. You just put that in the regular chat. You don't have to do that in the super chat here. I know it's unfortunate Ross Chastain, it seems like he's just on the verge of pulling off one of these victories, especially with colleagues' team here, or another victory rather, but wasn't quite in the cards this time around. Maybe things will turn around a bit. I think, the video versus the scoring loop thing, I'm not really a fan of either one of them. I still think racing to the caution flag should be in there. The big reason that it was a problem before was you didn't have the safety advancements that we have now, at least on the final lap. I think maybe during the race I don't really have as much of a problem with freezing the field, but certainly when you get to the end of the race and of course proclivity for doing a lot of races where you're going to always have these green white checkered finishes, it seems like that plays into that there. Hey there, Jack, thank you for jumping into the group there too. But I definitely share the frustration there with with drivers not getting the best outcome they could. I'm sure Austin Cindric would be very outspoken on how this race particular turned out. I didn't watch the interview he had afterwards, but I'm sure that was certainly the case. But at the other end of the field, very interesting last place battle between Kyle Weatherman and Stephen Light, both of them having just a myriad of mechanical issues at the beginning. Stephen Light's car was practically undrivable, reminiscent of the Camry that he ran at Darlington earlier this year, where they basically just ran one lap and pulled in. Lack of practice being a serious issue for these small teams. And then ultimately getting some repairs done on that car. And then there was smoke in the cockpit. Light at one point said that the back of his seat was feeling hot, maybe an issue with the oil tank or something. And they stayed with it for a very long time and ultimately stayed in there. Oh, goodness. Beast of Metal, thank you again for the other super chat here. The rest of your statement here, because Kansas Speedway is too stupid to realize that using the Grand Canyon as a unit of measurement, replacing the scoring loops is a bad idea. Well, again, thank you again, first of all, for the my goodness, for the super chats on there. Big thank you on that. My goodness. But I do, again, going back with that, I do share the frustration there with the scoring loops. It seems like it does take I mean, I think anything that takes an element of the kind of sporting nature of it out of racing is a problem, because ordinarily you would be able to have if you can just look at video and have something that you look at clearly, I think that would be a good alternative. And that if we're not going to do racing the caution flag, even at the end, at least have something you can point at and treat it like a photo finish. But the scoring loop thing is always, it's ridiculous, because you can have a great race here, but then maybe the scoring loop is back here and they're like, car length apart and it's conclusive. So I'm with you on that. I mean, we certainly have the technology. I think it's the same argument you could probably put out there for why they don't have roof cameras in the cars. I mean, they always say it's a cost issue, but I think in the Pirelli World Challenge Series or whatever they call it now, they have like GoPros put in every one of the cars, and if they can afford to do it, I don't see how others couldn't. But maybe that's something that'll be in the further down the line. But again, the last place battle we have between Weatherman and Stephen Light. Weatherman having issues of his own, pulling behind the wall in the early laps there. It sounded like they had a battery issue or an electrical issue. Both Light and Weatherman were able to get their cars refired and back out there. It looked like we were going to have an interesting race back out of the garage area. Both of them ultimately falling back out of the race and finishing in the bottom two spots. Apparently a clutch issue for Weatherman on top of everything really did them in. Denise Mixenharmon over the radio was saying, we're done, but not for a lack of effort on both teams. I think the radio traffic between both of them, I found myself switching between them quite a lot in this, really showed how hard they're working to get every bit out there that they can, knowing that they don't have practice in qualifying, this being the best chance they have to perfect their cars. Again, Kyle Weatherman's team having the piece back cars back together after had that wreck over at Kentucky, after Weatherman got Harmon's team their first top 10. And then for Stephen Light's thing, this experiment where they've taken apparently a super speedway car and turned it into a downforce car, that's had its own challenges. And I guess both cars have been equally a handful here in these first two rounds. We'll see if this continues on after the off weekend into the race after the New Hampshire weekend, where we just had the Cup Series next week. And of course, we'll do a show on that and our article on the Cup Series finish there as well. Yep, Stephen Light. Yeah, his only win came for Robert Yates. That's correct, actually, back into Kentucky. Same with David Gilliland. I believe they had it in consecutive years, which is really neat about that. It's definitely made me take a fresh look at Kentucky if you look back at its past. But again, the big theme for this weekend at Kansas here, it definitely seems, and MRN was making a good case for this during the Truck Series race earlier today, one of the most competitive mile-and-a-half tracks out there. It seems to have a surprising balance of just the right amount of grooves, just the right age of the surface, having not too much grip or too little grip. And for some reason has been very racy, even in the Cup Series, where their package has really fallen short of expectations this year. I think, doing this whole low horsepower, high drag thing has just been ridiculous. I think the Cup Series cars should be the most out of control, the fastest cars out there, and the safest cars out there because of all of that too. Make them go out there and see if you can handle it. You go up there, you learn the racecraft of it, but then if you're ready to run a Cup car, that should be like a huge step up in horsepower and handling and everything else, and a real test of the driver's skill. I'm not sure exactly if we're seeing that, but certainly we had a whole lot going on there. So we had that, of course. But in the truck series deal, we had really a couple of interesting last place deals there. I mean, really not so much, I guess, on the Friday race. I had to watch that one tape delayed because I was resting up for work that day. But an issue on the number 33 for Kevin Donahue. It's good to see Donahue back out. Last time we saw him was getting a 12th place run at Gateway for the late Mike Mittler. It was good to see him back at the track. Kansas is one of the tracks where he and his brother Kyle have popped up here and there. So it's good to see him back out there. Unfortunately, power steering issues put him in the wall early, and they were able to fix the truck and run it back out there. Apparently, they didn't have power steering issues today, and in fact, they were able to stay on the lead lap and use pit strategy to get the front row towards the end of the race. Him alongside Tanner Gray. How exciting was that? Unfortunately, he wasn't up there very long, dropped back 21 spots in 3 laps, and ultimately spun out and dropped towards the back of the field from there. But a much better finish than they had the day before. And hopefully we see more of this Donahue kid in the races ahead. I think he's a sleeper here to get some good runs, even with limited assets. The other side of that, of course, Tanner Gray, the other last place finisher that we had most recently at Texas when the transmission locked up. This time around, capitalized on that same pit strategy, getting a 4th place run. Great run for that kid. Great showing for him, making the transition from drag racing into the Xfinity, or the Truck Series rather, having a good finish there. So that was good to see. Brian Dozet, unfortunately, taking the last place finish in the Saturday race, but at the back of the field, that was the real race that was pretty exciting. I was actually tracking that one at the parking lot of a store after work because I didn't have enough time to drive back here after work, so I was just doing that remotely. So that's why it was a little bit of a challenge juggling the scanner and the Twitter back and forth. But regardless, the battle at the back of the field was absolutely exciting. For some reason, we just had a group of drivers that all lost laps at about the same rate and were on about the same page between Dozet and Benning and Cobb and Cicerelli, and really all of them trading spots. Even Majeski back there when he had his issue, dropping in the back of the field there with a flat tire. Majeski eventually drove through this entire group. But Benning and Cicerelli in particular, I don't know if they showed it on TV. I was just doing it by the radio, but if they showed it, I think they were really going at it pretty hard there. Benning and Cicerelli were going back and forth there a lot there at the back of the field. And ultimately, the last place battle would be on the both of them when the 28 truck got pushed behind the wall with electrical issues. That created a bit of a furor there that was tracked on. I was tracking on Twitter, where Benning was just having a lot of problems organizing his crew. I'm sure the heat and everything was playing a role in it. I know that the one gentleman, I believe the Start and Park Car account on Twitter, was doing work for Benning this weekend, but the heat was just way too much. He had to get fluids and everything for yesterday's race. I hope he's doing okay today because it sounded like it was every bit as warm today, even though the race was a bit earlier in the day. But Benning's team really putting on a good show out there, getting a decent finish. Cicerelli as well, 24th and 25th, I believe they were, surviving all these wrecks that collected a lot of the big names out there. But doing a great job and capitalizing on that as best they could. Unfortunately, Cobb couldn't join them. She ended up getting damaged in one of those wrecks, which is too bad, because Cobb at one point said that she had a good truck. Unfortunately, the engine wasn't very good, and she said she had a better engine that they were going to put in at Michigan. Hopefully, they can bang the dents out on the number 10 and get that one ready. I know that Sauter and Friesen seemed to get a lot more damage in that one, and ultimately dropping them into the bottom 5 at the end of that. But the feature on Dozet in the Truck Series and the one on Stephen Light unofficially, unless that changes, for the Xfinity Series, again, we'll have those up by tomorrow, sometime that afternoon, I believe thereabouts, and we'll get those articles up for you then. The articles already on Donahue from yesterday and the Cup Series race on Thursday are already online. This brings us, of course, to the Cup Series race. Can't forget about that. Probably one of the best Cup races we've had on a mile and a half this year. Reminds me of Las Vegas a little bit. Way back in the pre-COVID days when we had the February race there. Not just because we had a big wreck at the end of the race, which ultimately did mess things up there, but a lot of comers and goers in that one too, where you had Alex Bowman and Ryan Blaney working their way up to the lead, ultimately dropping back on pit strategy, and Logano taking the victory with Matt DiBenedetto up there. Very similar circumstance in this one with some of the similar faces. Alex Bowman once again being in the factor in the finish. Ryan Blaney, actually, as a matter of fact, being up there too, now that I think about it. William Byron looked like he was going to be in position to take his first victory. Unfortunately, didn't quite happen there. Kevin Harvick then seemed like he was going to be the factor, and running in a way that a race that seemed like he was going to win no matter what. Ultimately loses to Denny Hamlin in the final sprint to the finish. I got to say, great racing up front there. Now, of course, on my side, this all took a back seat to the other big last place story from the weekend, which was the potential of Ryan Preece becoming the first driver to have 4 consecutive Cup Series last place finishes, which has not happened in Cup Series history and since has not happened because the last place run went to his teammate, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who, much like Stephen Light on today's race, had smoke in the cockpit, pulled behind the wall. Team sounded like they were going to work on the issue, but about a third of the way into the race, they were done for the day. Didn't come back out there. So now the JTG Daugherty team has 4 straight last place finishes, which has not happened since the spring of 2010 with the Start and Park team Prism Motorsports that used to be owned by Phil Parsons. And back when they expanded to 2 cars that year, one with Michael McDowell, now driver of the number 34 car, and the retired Dave Blaney, father, of course, of Ryan Blaney. That team had 4 Start and Park efforts, 1 each with each of their teams, or 2 each with each of their teams, or every other week that way. The drivers also switched cars during that time period. But no other team, at least that I've seen so far, has had 4 consecutive last place finishes. And I certainly don't think, at least in the Cup Series, that any team has had 5 in a row. Much more common in the Xfinity Series. Obviously, if you think back to Jeff Green about 2015, he had 8 last place finishes in a row, all with the same team at TriStar. Had 4 in a row with TriStar in 2011 even. Has broken many of those records. So it wouldn't be an overall NASCAR record. But if JTG finishes last again this weekend, the number 47 team or the number 37 team could very well be the first time in history that a team has had 5 consecutive last place finishes, multi-car team or otherwise. And that's the other part of it that makes it, I think, all the more rare is, of course, further back in the history, you don't really have a lot of multi-car teams out there. The few that you did weren't the teams that finished last all the time. If you talk about Carl Kiekhofer's team or Petty Enterprises or other organizations like that, that's very much a different thing. I think that's why the results tend to skew more towards the recent years. I'll see if there's anything else that pops up on the statistics, but I believe it's the only other time that we've had it in the Cup Series. So we'll see if we get some more information on that. But unfortunate deal for Preece in particular. I believe he was about 13th spot on the backstretch. Glad he walked away from that accident for sure. You know, I know that it can be a little bit tricky covering these stories, of course, about last place finishers. We certainly don't hope for a driver to have a serious accident or a serious injury or anything like that. Preece would manage to avoid the issues of his teammate and stayed on the lead lap, much like what Kevin Donahue was doing in the Truck Series race earlier today, bouncing back from earlier misfortune. Preece was running around the 13th spot when that wreck unfolded in front of him between Ryan Newman and other drivers up there. Unfortunately, Preece ends up getting collected in that, drops back and to the inside line. And like we've seen too many times, especially with these tracks where they paved long expanses of runoff. I mean, we're getting rid of the grass, okay, that doesn't tear up the splitters, but the replacement with these large expanses of pavement, it seems like once a car cuts left and everything locks down, the car just won't slow down and it's just going to go straight in the wall no matter what. We've seen this at Fontana a number of times with a very similar setup there. Kyle Larson had a really bad wreck there just a few years ago, very similar to what Ryan Preece had, where you just go head on into the wall and the car kicks back around. Actually, Larson had a bad one at Talladega at that one too. Matt Kenseth even too. Danica Patrick. I mean, many examples at different tracks there. So luckily there's a safer barrier there. Luckily, in just a matter of seconds, we see these drivers climb out of the car, apparently uninjured. You know, we'll see what things happen from there. But can't blame Ryan Preece for being frustrated. I mean, he had a great run going there. There's actually a fan group that has a graphic that I thought was very instructive. I believe I retweeted it on my account, where it talked about all the times just this year alone that Ryan Preece has been either in and around the top 15 and caught up in something that either wasn't his fault, like a wreck that somebody else triggered, or he had a mechanical issue that took him out of the race. Happened plenty of times. I've forgotten that he was second at Daytona, I believe, when Ross Chastain's wreck happened. So who knows what could have happened there. Chris Buescher was obviously really good in that car at the Daytona 500 for a number of years. Priest looked like he was going to build on his Matador run in the 47 before, where he was avoiding all those wrecks. I hope he bounces back. I was hoping, you know, in the background here that maybe he would have like three last place finishes in a row and then win the next race. I figured I was all ready for something like that to happen and do an article on that. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and he ended up still towards the bottom end of the field, but not in last place. And we'll see at New Hampshire next Sunday, where apparently it's just a standalone race for the Cup Series, which is interesting. We'll see from there if JTG Nardi Racing is going to be last again, and that will certainly be among the stories that we're going to follow. This, of course, with Priest's incidents these last few weeks, has already handed him the lead in the 2020 LASCAR Cup Series Championship. However many races that's going to be, we'll find out. So that's going to be a different situation with that. I'm just checking out some of your guys' comments here on here. I think I'm talking about some different betting or something. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah. So, but really, yeah, plenty to certainly talk about from this. I think a lot of positives from this, in spite of the continuing issues with the aero packages in the Cup Series, Truck Series again. I mean, and no matter how many races they run, good to see them back out there. Unfortunate for Corbin Forrester having to withdraw from today's race because apparently they didn't have a backup. They had 38 trucks in the Friday race, and then just 37 in today's race. But they put on a good show back there, and I'm glad. I mean, if I had to miss one of the ones between them, I'm glad I didn't miss the one today because that battle at the end was great. I would have hated to miss the radio communications on that. So I hope you guys enjoyed following that on the Twitter account there. But that'll be interesting right now. So we'll see how things shake out from there. Oh, let's not ignore the elephant in the room here. Big thanks, everyone, for spreading the video that I posted on Friday. I had a very hard time hiding the last little bit of a detail about this upcoming video I'm working on for this channel right here. As I did reveal on Friday the 24th, I am doing a collaboration with Slap Shoes on a video called The Beginning of the End, which is the story about the rise and fall of Yin Racing. This is a tie-in not only with the videos that I've done on MB2 Motorsports for both Johnny Benson and Jerry Nadeau, but also Slap Shoes' video series Liars, Thieves, and Lawyers, where he talked about large controversies in sponsors and teams and things that have been unscrupulous in the sport's history. In discussing this series with my brother, we were surprised that Gin Racing hadn't come up yet. And actually, I was about to mention Gin Racing at the end of the Benson video, and I ended up taking that out because I felt, well, that kind of doesn't really fit in there. So really, at that same point, it's like, well, hey, everyone, let's do some kind of thing where we kind of combine the two together. And I had a script that came together pretty well. It's going to be a moderate length one. I think the working draft of it right now is about 45 to 50 minutes long. It's not going to be as long as 3 before February, but it'll probably be a comparable length to the Jerry Nadeau video, depending on how much footage is used. Luckily, after work tomorrow, I'm going to start kind of working on the graphics for that and get closer to a release date. I'm also working out more details on getting that video set up there. It's going to be the advanced access. I worked out this. So the advanced access to that video before the release, the public release, is going to be through Slap Shoes Patreon. I don't know what level you need to join for that. I'm leaving that entirely up to him. But that was the offer I extended to him when I brought him on board. He did a great job with the audio. It's been very easy dropping the audio in there. I recorded my part of the script last week to kind of get that in there. Kind of have a thing where we kind of trade off in it. It's going to be really good. I'm very excited about it, and I hope you guys are too, because I think it's going to be a very interesting story and very fitting with the other content that we have on this channel here. Lesser known stories or lesser reviewed stories from recent years. And this one, I have to say, was already quite a bit more of a challenge than the other ones. Like 3 before February was challenging just on the subject matter, but in terms of the research, the body of work that you had to research from was relatively not that difficult to get a hold of because there wasn't as much content there. You fast forward to 2007, suddenly J-Ski is not enough. and there's so much more content out there. Of course, it's before the social media thing, but a lot of other information to kind of sift through, and a lot of different angles to it that I didn't even remember from the time. So that's going to be an interesting way to tackle that there. I'm very interested to see how that goes, and that'll be the difference there. Oh, good. My goodness, Mr. Ant, thank you so much for this super chat here. Thoughts on Chase Elliott's performance dip lately? Yeah, very good question. It's Chase Elliott again. I'm concerned with him about being perceived as the next Dale Earnhardt Jr. And this is not a slight to Dale Jr. because, of course, what he's done for the sport beyond him, as a driver, I think is even more laudable than what he has done behind the wheel. What he's done behind the wheel, 2 Daytona 500 wins, all those most popular driver things. There's all that. It's a little troubling to see Chase Elliott not be as much of a factor as he was even in May, when it seemed like, Darlington and Charlotte and all these other races, he was very much of a factor in it. Obviously, he won the All-Star race, so that can't be ignored. But it does seem like he's a little – these other teams just kind of caught up a bit. I think maybe he was able to make the adjustments, no practice and qualifying a little bit quicker than maybe some of these other veterans, your other drivers like Joey Logano, Keselowski, and others like that. And I think these other guys have just caught up there. We saw certainly in Kansas's Thursday race that the Hendrick teams, they still can get up there, but they're having a lot. What I think they're having more than anything is just bad luck. And I think this isn't just a Chase Elliott issue. It's certainly a Jimmy Johnson issue. That guy seems to just find a wreck anywhere. I think he's just hitting the walls that he didn't hit during his glory years, and they're just happening all in the space of about 3 seasons here since his last win. And I think it's a difficult situation for all of them. I think Jeff Burton for the NBC broadcast was bringing up something about the other teams just catching up to the Chevys. Or I think it was Dale Jr. who mentioned it, that the Chevys were really good at the beginning of the year, and then everybody else has kind of caught up a bit. Toyota still have a few issues here too. I think it's surprising Truex, especially Kyle Busch, kind of not really being as consistent of a factor there. But I think the Ford program this year is just really, really good. And even when we've seen other Ford teams not be as consistent, like Brad Keselowski or Ryan Blaney, and they're right up there in the thick of it, there's been other Ford teams that have been catching up. Almirola has had a fantastic stretch lately in the number 10. Of course, Cole Custer winning in the 41 car. Stuart Haas's team has just completely woken up here these last few weeks, where it seemed like Penske was going to be just carrying the banner by themselves for Ford for a little bit. I think that battle by itself has squeezed these guys out. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the JR Motorsports teams and the Xfinity side, because whenever I watch an Xfinity race, it always seems like the race comes down to Chase Briscoe or Austin Cindric, and the JR Motorsports guys are just there. And, it's not bad. They're doing as good as they can. They can get like 3rd through 6th or whatever. And Noah Gragson will be up there. Justin Allgaier will be up there. Michael Annett will be up there or something like that. But it just seems like those Fords, or in this case today as well, those Toyotas as well, whether it's Harrison Burton or Brandon Jones all of a sudden, or, maybe we'll see if Riley Herbst is able to join that trio there. They're the ones that have the real key to it there. So that's kind of where I see Hendrick as being. They're kind of like right on the cusp of it, but just not quite able to get through there. And I don't know what the difference is going to be, since they're not going to have practice or qualifying the rest of this year, including the playoffs, and who knows what that's going to be. So I think it's troubling. I think I can see how it would seem like more of a Chase Elliott issue, because he's clearly the best guy that they have there. And although I do think Bowman and Byron aren't that far behind, especially from what we saw this past week, but I think it's more of a Chevy issue, and not even just a Hendrick issue, but Hendrick as the top one of the Chevys. But I wouldn't say it's a Chase Elliott issue specifically. I do think there's a lot of hype in there with Chase, and so I think the expectations are way up here no matter what, compared to somebody like Bowman or Byron, or even Byron in that case, yeah. But maybe they'll close the gap there at some point, but I don't know how they're going to be able to do that if they can't have practice. I think the Fords just really got to drop on these guys, and they've really figured something out. Even Joey Logano's, even though he had the wreck here this week in Kansas, I think he's really kind of gotten his feet back under him after the crew chief swaps and everything. And I think he's doing a good job. I mean, it seemed like Keselowski was in that position before, and everybody wondering if he wasn't having the best crew chief of the swap. And then all of a sudden he wins the 600, he wins Bristol, and now he's right back in the conversation again. I'm still wondering about, again, Truex and Kyle Busch. I find that much more troubling. And I'm not one to really say that, oh, we need to hit the panic button or anything like that, because I've said this before. I think if you just get a point where Kyle Busch wins a race, even if he just wins one race, and even if it isn't until September, 90% of the media will just be like, Kyle Busch is back. Oh my gosh, it's he's better than ever and he's unstoppable. Even if he just won one race, because everybody knows under this point system that's all you need to do. So, and that's another thing. I mean, this is a whole other aside. That's the thing I don't really like about this point system, is that it allows for that. It doesn't reward consistency of any kind at all. You can be completely all over the place, win one race when you need to, and then either be to the next round or the playoffs at all. And I think Kyle Busch is just that one moment away. We may see that as soon as New Hampshire next week. Kyle's always been a factor in winning races there when Kevin Harvick hasn't won, and or Denny Hamlin for that matter. And he may have to take it away from the both of them to do it next Sunday. But I think that's certainly a possibility. But yeah, I think I've been much more troubled by Kyle Busch and Truex being a little off this year. I know Truex won Martinsville, so of course he's punched his ticket, but and Kyle's not really in any danger of falling out of the top 16 from where he is. But it is a little strange. I mean, Almirola has more points of any non-winner this year than Kyle does. At least he did going into Kansas. I don't know if that's still true. I think Almirola still had a good finish, so that probably is still true. But that would be a different situation from that. How about this rumor also? I don't like talking about rumors too much, but it's definitely floating around, so I guess we got to talk about it. The possibility of Hendrick Motorsports scaling back the number 88 team next year and going to just 3 cars. Going to your question here, Mr. Andy Ant, I think this is probably another thing that could be an issue in the Chase Elliott situation is Hendrick spreading themselves too thin with 4 cars? Seems like an unthinkable thought. I mean, my goodness, back in 2000 or 2002 or whatever, they would have 4 teams and a mix of veteran drivers, newcomers. It seems like some were good at some tracks and they were like the envy of everyone. And then, of course, the Gordon years and then the Johnson years and everything in between. And, you get other competitors up there that at least every once in a while would do well. Like Joe Nemechek, or Brian Vickers, Jerry Nadeau, and drivers like that. But if Jimmy Johnson's leaving, and if that sponsorship, I mean, is that sponsorship going to stay? Is there any question with that? Sounds like they want to stay with the team. Who knows what's happening there? Alex Bowman has had a patchwork of sponsorships on the 88 this year. A lot of times, I think even the race he had this week, if they just have a sponsor that just says Chevy accessories on it, that's not a good sign, because that means that they're just sponsored by the manufacturer. That's not actually any money changing hands. That's not an outsider investing in the team. And if you look closely at Johnson's car, I noticed this back in Indianapolis, it does a lot of the contingency sponsors are different, where it just has HendrickCars.com on the side. Now that's another placeholder that is not really an outside thing, of course, because of course that's Rick Hendrick's own business, putting his name on there. So how much money is coming out of the pocket of the team owner versus outside sources, and what factor is that going to play at the number 48 team or in any possible restructuring? If there's a restructuring, and if it were up to me, I think it'd be great if they went back to a 3-car lineup, and if they brought back the number 25 car, heck, bring back 25 and the 5 if they could. Is anybody running the 5 in the Cup Series? Well, I guess I'm sure I'm overlooking this, but I guess they're not. It seems like it's always there, but I guess when Kane retired, that was missing. But I would like to see them return to the lineup they had back in the late 90s. I think that'd be a great throwback thing to have the 24, the 5, and the 25 again, just like back in the day there, like going back to like 1993 even. I was thinking more 97 when they swept the top 3 at Daytona. But I think something like that would be a great way to, not just celebrate the past, but also look ahead to the future. Keep Byron to the 24. Bowman, he's up in the air. You can move him to the 48, and then gosh, who's that leave? I mean, there's the why am I drawing a blank? Yeah, Johnson. I'm not. The math is already messing me up. Oh, Chase Elliott, third. I don't know. I guess that would be the problem. Chase Elliott's not going to be not in the 9 car, so I guess they can't do that. But maybe have the 9 in place of the 5, which is pretty much what they did. So I don't see them changing that. Certainly not for him. But I don't know. I think it would look better, but I don't know. That's just me. But he's already developed a brand on that. I don't like when drivers change numbers a lot. I never got used to the 88 with Junior. Once Junior was out of the 8 car in 2007, 2008, I just viewed his car as not even a number, just a car with his face on the side of it. So the 88 to me was always like Dale Jarrett. You know, it was your Dale Jarrett. Even Rudd drove it in 2007. I still identified it more with Jarrett because he made that quality care car kind of his own. Obviously, he wasn't the only one to ever run it, but I think he was the most prolific one at the time. But yeah, no, the chase isn't going to change from the 9. That's not going to happen. But wishful thinking there. But I think having it be a single-digit one, maybe that'll still fit in there. You have the 20. Just bring back the 25. I think that would be cool. Change the 48 to the 25. That represents a handoff there for Johnson. It's a little unfortunate. I guess the tricky part with that is that you've kept the 24 since Gordon retired. So why not keep the 48 once Johnson retires? That kind of tells me they're probably not going to change the number at that point. But I don't know. Maybe they'll do I mean, they can do a satellite team or something like that to work out. These team alliances there kind of mess things up. But I always like the font that the 25 had. I know it's more of an aesthetic issue than anything. But these days, I mean, these teams can, you know, choose numbers seemingly at random. Look at all the stuff that's gone on with Rick Ware's team since the merger with Premium. So you kind of have that deal. But yeah, we'll see what happens on that. That would certainly be interesting. Also, oh gosh, I completely forgotten about this too. Great job by Matt Crafton winning today. I know it seemed like Christian Eckes was going to pull it off again. That day's coming. That kid's right on the cusp of it there. I think that he is right there, and as long as Kyle Busch is patient enough, and I know that's not a quality he has in abundance, I think that the number 18 team there with Eckes is going to pull something off here pretty soon. He should have won Pocono, should have won the race today, and has been factors in several of these other races. And the other one to watch is Todd Gilliland in the 38 truck. I mean, in spite of the wreck that he had at Texas, I think they're coming on strong there too. He seems a lot happier not being at Kyle Busch Motorsports and driving that 38. And that's good to see because I like to see the Gilliland family still have a presence in the sport. We talked a bit about David earlier on here. And then, of course, keeping that going with Todd with his great runs of the West Series. It'd be good to see him rise through the ranks there, too, and keep that going. Another one I didn't mention earlier, Myatt Snyder. Great job by the RSS Racing team to get him back out there. It's too bad he didn't show up in the broadcast, but they actually got him out there before the race started. And he was in cold trickle position where he had to be at mock speed to catch the back of the field. Catching up to everybody else at the back of the field there. So they did a great job getting them back out there with the loss of fuel pressure. I don't know how they got that done so quickly, but Jeff Green is involved in that team when he's not driving one of their cars. I know he has to be one person to certainly thank for that effort to get Snyder back out there. Ultimately got the lucky dog, lost the lap again, kind of worked his way to the finish there, but good effort by that team to get him back out there. The last place battle had another interesting angle with that, on top of what, of course, happened with Weatherman and Light and potentially what's going to happen there. Yeah, they were talking about it, but they didn't show him come back out there. They didn't mention it until his laps after he came back out because he was actually back out on that first lap. They mentioned it like 5 or 6 laps in. At least that's how I recalled it there. You know, it'd be I think part of that is just the limit of the whole things with the COVID regulations. You don't have somebody in the garage area to cover everything at the same time, but that would be good to see a bit more of that. Maybe it's too much to ask for here at the first part of this, but we'll see if things change around like that. Oh yeah, the talk about Levine family's team going up for sale. That's I don't know what's going on with that. I thought the charters were supposed to save teams like this, and the Joe Gibbs affiliation. I mean, if that's not enough for them, and enough to keep that team afloat, and they're having sponsorship issues still. I mean, I don't know what else it could be. Christopher Bell has done a really good job. He's one of these drivers, much like I think. Like Chase Elliott and some of these other competitors that have done a lot better since the return from the pandemic break. And Bell has really proven to be a fitting Cup Series competitor along with Reddick, and now Cole Custer is another one that's closed the gap there. Hopefully something works out on that to see if that works out. Yeah, Ross Chastain fan. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about Myatt Snider making the playoffs there. But I mean, it's a possibility. But Brandon Brown has been very consistent this year. And by the way, I'm glad to see him bringing out that black and white car again for Road America coming up. I think that was a really nice looking paint scheme. Very simple, just nothing fancy. Black on the roof and white on the sides. But from a distance, it was very distinctive. Stood out from other cars, and that's something that I think's been lost in a lot of these paint schemes. We have too many one color or another. It's another reason I like Stephen Light's scheme, where he has that orange and blue thing going. In spite of the fact that they have problems today, if I have to write about that car again and put another picture of it up, I'm not going to be complaining about that. I'll tell you what. But that would be another situation with that. Oh my gosh, Sam I Am 2000 or 20,024. Thank you so much for the super chat there. 48 will retire after the 2020 season. It's a bold prediction. I mean, Johnson certainly retired, but do you think the number is going to retire too? That would be interesting. It would be, again, and I think that's the tricky part. It would be interesting to see if they retire that number where they didn't do that with Gordon, where they put Chase Elliott in the car really right afterwards and kind of had that, and then Chase didn't really do anything with that number until he got to the 9 again. That would be. It would be tricky. It would be tricky. And yeah, the sponsorship from Ally Bank is going to be a big factor in that, because I know that they're going to want to keep something going there. And yeah, is that going to be something that's going to help Bowman be in that number? I mean, it stinks for Bowman because he has absolutely taken the scenic route up his rank up the ladder here, driving for BK Racing, driving for Tommy Baldwin Racing, driving Dale Jr.'s car when Jr. was still active. And now having the 88 car himself, now apparently maybe losing that number himself there. I feel bad for anybody that's been getting Bowman tattoos, because I'm sure their arm's been hurting from all the corrections over these years. But we'll see. I don't know. I think it's a 50-50. I think if they keep the 48, I mean, they may keep the 48 just because they have the 24, and I can see them doing that. If they don't do that, I see them bringing back the 25, maybe ahead of the 5. Although the 5 history with Hendrick, maybe they bring the 5 back more likely. I'm biased because I want them to do the 25, but maybe they'd run the 5 instead, just because that's the number that Hendrick started with. That'd be a possibility. Beast of Metal, thank you again for your super chat. My goodness, you guys are. I really appreciate that. By the way, I know times are really tough right now. I don't want you guys giving anything that you can't afford to give. Same for those of you in the Patreon and all that. But I do appreciate it, and I want to make sure I do absolutely all the super chats that we have on here. Beast of Metal 1989. Again, I always assumed KBM's recent driver churn was more a byproduct of TRD having no money for other prospects because they spent nearly $25 million getting Bell to Cup. Well, that's a good point. I'm not sure about that. I wasn't, it sounded like with Todd Gilliland's issue that there was some kind of issue with just playing chemistry. I know he mentioned that when he was doing his interview about the 38 team, that he admitted that they had fast equipment, but just something just wasn't working there. Now, if the Bell investment was a big distraction, that's one thing that could be happening. I can't speculate on that because I don't really know anything more about that. But if it was, it certainly didn't help. That's for sure. But I think obviously when you had Gilliland win that race, he won the race at Martinsville last year, and then he came over the radio and told Kyle to stay in his motorhome or something. It sounded like there was something very personal going on there. That was a big issue. And Harrison Burton, same situation there. Driver that, Kyle Busch is just not happy with their drivers and they're not winning. And he has very high standards when it comes to that. Now Harrison Burton goes over to the Busch Series more convincingly, gets in that 20 car, and now he's, wins Fontana. Could have won the race today, and he's on a better trajectory too. So it could be there's just a cultural issue at KBM. I hope that's not the case, because there's still some good competitors coming up through there. Chandler Smith comes to mind. I know Brandon Jones fills in there, but he's already an Xfinity Series regular. Christian Eckes being the other one there to look at. I'd love to see them be able to, get to the next level wherever that is. But unfortunately, this charter system has really screwed things up because now there's a cap on how many teams you can have and how many successful teams you can have, how many opportunities there are, and I hope that changes at some point because that this whole thing has just been just ridiculous. I'm glad we're getting 40-car fields at least. It's still not the 43-car fields they should be. I think they just created this artificial ceiling and everybody's bouncing off that glass ceiling now and ended up in different ranks. I know there are already discussions. We did the video the other day about Quinn Houff. I think it's a very much, the same. I think that's another reason that maybe that's where a lot of these frustrations are coming from, is he is taking up one of those few spots that are remaining. Now, I think, again, it's a business deal. He earned his spot up there. He had, he got a place in there, and the team's not going to, keep him if there's going to be ongoing problems. But I think there's definitely different things that teams look for and different objectives they have if you're a team that's further back versus one that's closer up. That's the one problem with a lot of these young upstarts coming up, and we've seen this with Tyler Reddick and some of these other competitors that I do enjoy seeing, but they're not willing to drive any of those slower teams. They're not willing to drive any of those smaller cars. They want to make sure that there is a top flight ride for them when to get to the Cup Series, which is worlds apart from where the sport was even 20 years ago. When you had Tony Stewart getting a Joe Gibbs ride right off the bat, or Kenny Irwin getting in with Robert Yates Racing, that was highly unusual. It was much more typical that you would be a guy like Bobby Hamilton Sr., late Bobby Hamilton Sr., where he would drive for TriStar Motorsports, a team that had never won before, a team that had only been around for maybe a year and a half, and just do the best that you can, beating Ted Musgrave driving for the DeWitt team, and that being another small single-car operation. But that ended up being one of the best Rookie of the Year battles in recent years because both of them were equally matched with the equipment they had. Unfortunately, that's just not the world that we are in right now, for better or for worse. You can see rookie drivers compete for wins, like we saw with Cole Custer, but you also see other drivers that are working their way up there, like a Landon Castle or others, that find that they can't get into a higher ticket ride for one reason or another. So there's that whole situation. Yeah, look at Suarez. Yeah, MLG Pro Swag. You got a perfect point there. Yeah, that's another problem. See? And Suarez is actually a good point because look, when Suarez got up there, what did he get? He got a Gibbs ride, and then he gets put to this other team, and the Gaunt brothers aren't Gibbs. I mean, they're a Toyota team out there, but you remember those mechanical issues they had at the start of the Vegas race, or not making the race at Daytona. So many other problems that face over there. It's a whole different world in these small teams, and maybe if he started with that small team and built up his skills again, like a Landon Castle or like one of these other guys. I know Landon was a Hendrick development driver, but not for very long. Most of his career, he's been a start and park driver or a driver for a team that needed to qualify on speed and had to do it. And if he didn't do that, that was it. I mean, he had to just perform in those moments. And I think not having that anymore and these locked in spots. I know we don't have qualifying this year, so it's a different scenario this year. But even before this, and obviously, hopefully sometime after this here next season, we're going to have qualifying again, and it's still going to be put up or shut up time out there. So it'd be good to get that back in there. Yeah, Daniel Hemrick, another one, exactly. Although I think Hemrick's doing better in the JR cars now in the Busch Series. He shouldn't have been promoted when he was. I think it was a bit of a complex for him that he didn't get promoted before he won a Busch Series race, Xfinity Series race. I still like to call it the Busch Series, but maybe that will improve in time, and he can get up to there at that point, and he'll get there. He's been knocking on the door of it in the 8 car this year, and obviously that's a top flight ride there with what we talked about with JR Motorsports earlier. But I think what was the problem is that Hemrick's first Cup starter, one of his first ones, was over at the Roval, and he had a really good weekend there in a race where nobody knew what exactly was going to happen. He was one of the big surprises in practice and qualifying. Didn't have a great run in the race, but you could easily dismiss that on inexperience. It's unfortunate that he wins Rookie of the Year, beating Ryan Preece, and then ultimately doesn't get to stay in the car. Now Reddick, I think, is a much more promising prospect, and so unfortunately, again, it's a business. You got to get the best guy in there. But the Hemrick will be back. I think he'll probably be back at some point. But what ride is that going to be? I don't know. We got to get some more Cup teams up there. These mergers and everything, like what we've had with Rick Ware's team, and basically collecting all of these charters from smaller teams that now pretty much don't exist. That's got to be a little troubling, because now we're getting to that point that I'd always been concerned about since this charter team thing started. That we're going to have pretty much a point here where maybe we'll only have about 4 or 5 teams that each have 4 or 5 cars, maybe have 16 or 20 cars in the field, and that's it. And is that going to be any better? I mean, it's just going to be like Formula One. I mean, do we want NASCAR to be modeled off that, or do you? But I don't think it should be. I think there should still be that path to start a team, to get something together. There's already plenty of obstacles already. If it's sponsorship or getting the car approved or fabrication and all that, you already see that in the Xfinity Series. I think the Xfinity Series is where the Cup Series should be. That maybe you have a few top flight teams with top flight drivers, and then you have these other guys that are working their way in there. And then occasionally a small team that joins up that you've never heard of before, like Sam Hunt Racing. They're doing a solid job with Colin Garrett and Brandon Godovic. That's been a great story there. So that'll be definitely something to see there. Take care, Pat Hugo. Thanks for coming by. Hello, Sir R. Good to see you on board there. But yeah, I mean, this is a, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about. I appreciate you raising the question on here. Let's see, kind of scrolling back here. Yeah, Beast of Metal, I agree. I think the thing with Quinn Houff, again, I already did a video on that on the second channel. If you haven't seen that, I just did a live stream, a brief one on, I think it was Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, talking about a lot of the furor over Quinn Houff. Yeah, I think collecting a couple of big name drivers, getting Christopher Bell and Matt DiBenedetto involved, that probably was a factor. Yeah, I mean, it reminded me of the J.J. Yaley wreck at Charlotte too. We were right to point that out, and unfortunately, that was one where Mark Martin got collected in that. But these things happen. These things happen, and that's why I thought it was relevant to bring up the Indianapolis thing, because everybody was saying, "Oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing because he didn't do a heads-up move on pit road." And I'm like, well, he did at Indianapolis. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, well, he could have easily." Big deal. He didn't plow into a wreck. That's what I expect people to do. It's like, well, Martin Truex plowed into that wreck. Ryan Preece plowed into that wreck. Ricky Stenhouse plowed into that wreck. Justin Allgaier plowed into that wreck in a Hendrick car. So I think it still is worth something that dude didn't do that, and he saved the rides of the 2 cars in front of him too. So I don't know. I don't want to hammer that again, but I thought that was really bizarre that was treated as such a controversial statement. Again, I think that's just a commentary on social media where it's the extreme. If you don't think that Quinn Houff did anything wrong, then people are just going to conclude that you were thinking that Quinn Houff is the greatest driver ever and he's beyond criticism. And I'm not saying that, but that's the way it always gets interpreted, and that's where we are. But that's a whole other aside. But other than that, I mean, really a lot of good to take from the racing this weekend. Unfortunate that today turned out to have so many other tragedies with the passing of Maurice Petty and the competitor in the Pinty series and so forth there. But a lot of positives. I think that the sport can look ahead into what we're going to have in New Hampshire next week, and then then we're going to go into August from there. And not too much longer until we get to the Daytona Infield Road Course with no practice or qualifying. Oh my goodness, Mr. Antian, thanks again for the other super chat here. I wish AJ Allmendinger would have a FT ride. You mean F1 ride? I'm not sure. I'm not familiar unless I'm missing a division there. Do you mean sports cars? I'm not big into that. Allmendinger is a great talent. Obviously, the run that he had at the Indy Infield Road Course was another great reminder of that. He's had some bad luck, unfortunately. Oh, full-time. You mean full-time ride? Oh, yeah. Good call on that. A full-time ride, that would be nice. I think, and again, when was his last full-time ride in the Cup Series? With JCG Darty Racing. Maybe that just wasn't the best team for him after a while. He won his first race with them. He stayed with them for a very long time. He was very loyal to them there. Unfortunately, things just didn't shake out there towards the end. I remember he won that stage at Sears Point and then blew the transmission just on a mistake. Just stuff happened, and he looked just green in the face how embarrassed he was on that. And that's unfortunate. I mean, the man is a very talented road course driver, and if he could be a full-time driver again, I think that'd be great. If he was full-time in any of the series, I think that would be cool, especially in the Xfinity series where there's such a disproportionate number of road courses, which is fantastic. Obviously, we see him already running those, but if we did more of those in the Cup series, which it looks like they might, we'll stick around for this year's schedule and the next year. That'd be another one. Oh, Balso Hardwell, thank you so much for the super chat here too. My goodness, you guys are awesome. Kevin Harvick gave Junior a concussion in 2002 for wrecking coming to pit road in California. It happens to everyone. That's a very good point. That was a very serious accident. And you know what? Under the same logic, Kevin Harvick could very easily be very criticized for that, especially involving Dale Jr., for goodness sake. But that was a wreck that got kind of swept under the rug, I mean, and there was a time where he was trying to drive through that injury and not acknowledge it. But again, and it shows where the difference is in how concussions are treated since then. I mean, obviously a lot more serious now than they had been even in 2002. But yeah, that was a very scary wreck at Fontana. They got clipped on the apron, and that track is unbelievably wide. Walking up the banking, it doesn't seem like it would be that much when you watch it on TV, but the TV does not do it justice. So if a car gets hooked in some way and it gets quarter paneled there and turned around, there is a long slide into that outside wall. We talked about the backstretch earlier with Larson. That applies to any part of the track there too. So yeah, so you're exactly right, Balls Hardwell. It's the same deal with with drivers getting collected in other incidents. It's not unprecedented there. And again, Kevin Harvick, much like J.J. Yaley, has had many other instances that show that they do know what they're doing. Even Yaley, actually, this year, somebody pointed this out I think on Reddit earlier, that Yaley has had some very consistent finishes for Rick Ware Racing after contending for. He took the Xfinity Series last car championship last year. This year, he's been very solid, about a 22nd to 25th place run. And these aren't just races where you've had a lot of attrition. These are runs where he's actually outperformed. One at Kansas was very surprising. They didn't even have any sponsorship on that 27 car, and he managed to kind of weave through stuff and have a solid run there. So I'd love to see Yaley get some more good runs out there. He's surprised before. Had that top 10 run at the Daytona 500 in 2013. Him and Michael McDowell would be good to see at the same time. But yeah, it would be good to see. It'd be good to see something more like that too, with Yaley having some more good runs. I need to see Yaley beat Mikey's over streak. That would be something. That'd be something. Oh gosh, and Bob Bear. Yeah, that too. Thank you for bringing that up, Isaac. Yeah, another one. I mean, this is the thing. I don't know if it's just the COVID or if it's other things going on there. But yeah, we're hearing an awful lot of all this here. Obviously, yeah, condolences certainly to the Bear family. Obviously, they get talked about a bit in the 3 Before February video and how difficult of a time that was in their history, given the contributions that he and his family had given to racing in the Northeast. I think Mike Joy had a very good statement addressing just how significant that was to racing in that community. I'd love to do New Hampshire one of these days. It's not a race that we've covered yet, but I think that would be it's definitely got a very passionate fan base. And of course, unfortunately, we go into New Hampshire next week with that cloud over that. I'm sure the track's going to do something to honor him for sure. And we'll certainly be interested in seeing what that is for next week's race. It's unfortunate that it's against the backdrop of so many other things going on there, but that would certainly be another one to talk about there for sure on all that. Yeah, so there you go. That's right, Sarar. So yeah, they're gonna have fans in New Hampshire. That's good to see. Sarar, yeah, hope you, yeah, if you get some good pictures there at the track, don't hesitate to share them there for sure. We'll be doing some more stuff there, and yeah, definitely like to see what's going on with what's going on there at the race. It's not gonna be hot. That'll be good. August in New Hampshire, I imagine August in just about anywhere is gonna be pretty hot. It's been pretty. Actually hasn't been too bad over here. It hasn't been too bad these last couple days. It's probably going to warm up a little bit this week, but we'll not turn this into weather chat. But I guess we can do forecasts as well as Larry McReynolds or anybody else in that standpoint there. But that would be interesting to see. But yeah, so that's about. I think if you guys have any other questions on stuff from this here, you can definitely ask me here on this. And what we'll do is just see what's going on there. But yeah, it is surprising who's which age. I don't really keep track of that very much. But yeah, Yaley being yeah, what, 40, 43? Goodness. Yeah, see, there you go. I mean, it's just like that. I mean, they mentioned Truex being 40, and well, Jeff Gordon being 40, like, I guess sort of 39 or thereabouts, 40 next year, I guess. He was born in 71. Um, to me, Jeff Gordon still looks like he did back in 1998. I can't, for some reason, seeing the way he looks now, not saying it looks bad, but I'm just saying he doesn't. I have a hard time justifying, like, oh, wait, that's the same guy in the late '90s with the big swoop in his hair and Brooke Gordon there and the Fritos commercials and all that stuff. That's the one I was usually identify in that standpoint. But I mean, that's the thing. The drivers come of age, and Kevin Harvick, being in there and everything, and so forth. That's being all that. But yeah, again, Brandon White is the driver at the Pinty series. There, I saw more comments on that. I keep getting that tangled up because I keep almost saying Brandon Jones, but yeah, Brandon White is the competitor there in that. He'll be 50, not 40. Oh man, see, now you're really blowing my mind. Now I'm thinking like Harry Gant ages or Bobby Allison ages. So there you go. Even that's even more astounding to me. But yeah, so that's really the deal. Like Brandon White, that was one of the teams. Unfortunately, the two races that Brandon White didn't compete in the Pinty Series last year were both in low sport. I was searching my memory to see if I had anything from his coverage that weekend. Unfortunately, the team was there, but he wasn't entered in the race, so he wasn't there the weekend we were up there last fall. It would have been great if we were able to talk to him or had some other stuff there. Incidentally, I think the paint scheme he had on the 04 looks pretty clean. I like the way that looked, but an unfortunate deal there. I know he's been, yeah, competing with under difficult circumstances during all of that as well. But yeah, would love to cover some more Pinty series stuff there. They it's no holds barred in that series for sure. They really put it all out there, and Brandon was certainly one of those competitors as well back then. All right. Let's see. Yeah, ARCA. My goodness, I haven't really followed that closely. I've pretty much left that just William Saki, our ARCA correspondent. I'm sure he's working the article that we'll have next week for the action in Kansas. There, yeah, the small fields. Again, we talk about small fields in the Cup Series. Certainly in the ARCA Series with this merger and everything. I just don't know how that's gonna shake out. It's already been an issue enough in the West Series with things being what they are there. But yeah, it's kind of a tricky deal there. But that's kind of the situation there. How would I? Oh, MLG Pro Swag. See your question here. How would I rank John Hunter Nemechek's rookie year to Reddick, Custer, and Bell? I always forget John Hunter Nemechek's a rookie. I think that should be a positive for him. I know he ran a few races last year, but not as a full season. I'm already used to him being in the Cup Series, so it's hard for me to put him in the same category as those other drivers. Of course, you got to talk about Brennan Poole also in the same breath. Which has already been kind of up and down. I know he had a decent run at Darlington going at one point before some mechanical issues. But I think John Hunter Nemechek is doing a fantastic job. I think he very easily could have won that Talladega race if Ryan Blaney hadn't decided to just obliterate everybody across the start-finish line and do that. He and Eric Jones were really coming there at the end. So I think John Hunter is he's arrived. I think he is. I was very struck by how aggressive he was at Fontana. He seemed like he was making the most aggressive dive bombs into turn one whenever I was up there. We'll see if that pays off for him. He had a great run in I believe the first race at Darlington when they came back. Then unfortunately had a wreck in the second one. Darlington giveth and taketh away as it tends to be. But it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. I think that would be. Yeah, I think John Hunter could be a real dark horse, and Michael McDowell as well. I mean, the Front Row Motorsports team has done really well this year. It's unfortunate that Michael got so much, unnecessary hate after the All-Star Open there, where he had the only wreck where people were wrecking each other for a spot, basically. I guess John Hunter spun by himself at some point in that, but Front Row Motorsports is like right on it this year, and they've really made the move from maybe about a 20th to 25th place team to about a 15th to 20th place team, and that's a big difference. If you can get in that range, you can start snatching away some top tens there with just a little bit of an improvement there. You start taking some spots away from some big names, and we've seen both. I've seen McDowell, I think, is particularly impressive because he's done really well at tracks that he historically has not done well at. Martinsville really comes to mind. The same night Bubba Wallace was doing well in the 43, McDowell was kind of overshadowed with that and doing really well in the 34 that night, having a good run. Corey LaJoie, of course, had a good run in that race that night too for Go Fast Racing. But the real test for McDowell though is when he does well at Las Vegas. For whatever reason, I'll tell you what, he's finished last at that track so many times for so many different teams. Even when he has great cars there, even in these recent years, if there was a track that would be, I think, most satisfying for him to win, it would have to be Las Vegas. So we'll see what happens in the playoffs here, one way or the other. But if you're looking for a great storyline, that would be a complete reversal of fortune from the last place battle. That would be interesting to see. Speaking of, I really want to see if I can find audio of Timmy Hill's broadcast before the Cup Series race, because somebody tweeted to me that said that Timmy was mentioning Ryan Prisco for the last place record. I know I've spoken with him before. I know that he and Carl check out the site, so I appreciate their support on that for sure. And we certainly appreciate writing about Timmy and Carl improving there and getting the best runs that they can get over in Motorsports Business Management. But I heard something about that. I mean, I don't know if that was just a rumor or something like that, but I'd like to know certainly if there's audio of that floating around. Yeah, Benny Parsons, yeah, ARCA should have stayed with the Gen 4 car permanently. Yeah, absolutely agree. I think the steel body cars had just amazing personality, especially that Wayne Peterson's team in particular. All those cars where they're just completely, looks like somebody just took a baseball bat to them and they stick an earned number on it and put Great Railing as their sponsorship behind it, and then they just go back out there and do the best run they can. I think that's fantastic to see. Hopefully, maybe they can find some kind of way to work around it. I know Peterson's team's still out there, which I'm glad about. And I saw somebody mentioning Brad Smith out there with the Smith-Hilton effort, basically. Good to see them out there, of course, as well. I'd love to cover an ARCA race. You're supposed to have the ARCA West out here for Sears Point this year. Unfortunately, that got wiped with everything else. But hopefully we do another one of these races further up and be able to cover more of the action there. Who is on this here? Oh, yeah, there we go. Excellent. But yeah, there's the lots of good competition out there, lots of interesting storylines from there, and it'll be interesting to see what happens out there at the track. So I know I've kind of rambled on here for a bit. I'm probably gonna wrap up the show here now. I know I typically do the trivia thing. What I'll probably do is I'll do a standalone trivia show later on this week here, because it's gonna be a little bit different, because we're just gonna have just the Sunday show for New Hampshire. I'll see if I can squeeze in something like that this week, and we'll just do that as a standalone thing here. So I apologize for those of you who jumped in here waiting for trivia, but we'll jump into that our next time through here, because I got to rest up and get ready for work tonight, and then finish the articles. So I got to tell you, these quadruple header weekends they're fun, but they're also a little bit challenging to balance that. So I appreciate you guys bearing with me. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in there and for your support there. Thank you, everyone, for the super chats. My goodness, that's way above and beyond. Thank you so much for your support on that. LastCar.info is the website. Patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock is the Patreon. And @LastCarOnBrock is the Twitter. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the weekend's activities. Look forward to the articles tomorrow, and then more information on the beginning of the end video with Slap Shoes coming up. A lot of exciting things going on there, and we'll have that all covered for you in the days and weeks ahead. So have a safe weekend, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple days.